They showed up to his home, began vandalizing his property. When he came out to try and talk with them, they physically attacked him. He retreated inside. They went around to the back door and they fired a shotgun blast through it, and they nearly killed this officer. The story? Protesters tried to kill me. Video shows shot fired outside home of Wauwatosa officer Mensah. This is basically Milwaukee, about 90 miles north of Chicago, where all those riots took place just the other night. Now, this happened the night before, as I understand it, but it's in a similar area. And it seems to me that things are getting out of control, and I've said it many times. They're going to come to your house. They are going to come to your house. Now, this is an officer who's been suspended following the shooting of another individual, and it's being investigated. Well, the protesters are angry. They're demanding justice or action, and it would appear they're demanding this man's life. The rule of law is breaking down. Rioting sweeps across the country just over the past, just last night into this morning. The riots in Chicago were going on into daylight hours. And now we see stories like this. I mean, the stories from the day before, keep in mind. But this is the next escalation, man. They're not going to go protest and riot. They're not going to be demanding justice from the government. They're just going to show up to the homes of people they don't like, and they're going to take matters into their own hands, as it were. It's why I've been saying over and over again, you've got to get out of these cities. You really do. Well, let's read the story, and I've got more for you, because as it turns out, there were actually some other riots last night I didn't cover in the first segment. And we also have a statement from Bill Barr, who gave an interview last night talking about what the left is trying to do. And this helps them. Protesters tried to kill me, Fox 6 Milwaukee reports. Police are investigating an incident that happened at the residence of suspended Wauwatosa police officer Joseph Mensah around 8 p.m. on Saturday, August 8th. While police said it happened at the residence of the officer who has killed 3 people in the line of duty in 5 years, in a Facebook post, Mensah said it happened at his girlfriend's house. According to police, a group of approximately 50 to 60 people targeted and began to vandalize the home on 100th Street and Vienna Street. It was a whole lot of police cars and taped off, said Rita Evans, neighbor. I just couldn't get in front of my house. Copy editor, guys. So I had to park my car in the back. Video shared by a Fox 6 viewer showed the chaotic scene. Officer Mensah attempted to communicate with the group, but was physically assaulted outside his home, according to a release from Wauwatosa police around 11 a.m. Sunday. I've got sons. I'm just going to have to tell my sons to be very careful about going in and out, said Evans. As the officer made his way back into his home, police said armed protesters approached the rear door and a single shotgun round was discharged into the back door. The investigation into this incident is ongoing, police said Sunday morning. Fox 6 News reached out to Mensah and his attorney, and we expect to hear from him Monday. He released a statement on Sunday on Facebook. Well, we actually have the statement which gives a more definitive response, so we'll move on. They say, police said in the release Sunday morning, they were actively monitoring reported plans for demonstrations later Sunday, adding, all city of Wauwatosa employees support the right to peacefully protest. Further incidents of vandalism or violent behavior will be dealt with on a situation-by-situation basis. Mensah has been involved in the shooting deaths of 3 people in 5 years. The 2015 fatal shooting of Antonio Gonzalez was ruled justified, as was the 2016 death of Jay Anderson. Mensah's suspension, by a unanimous vote of the Wauwatosa Common Council on July 15th, stems from the officer-involved shooting death of 17-year-old Alvin Cole on February 2nd. That case is still under review by the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office. Meanwhile, Wauwatosa's mayor has called for him to transition from the Wauwatosa Police Department's employment. Mensah spoke out for the first time since the shooting on July 28th, telling a radio host he fired his weapon in self-defense, adding no one can explain why the PFC voted to suspend him, and indicating he believes it was done to appease protesters. Well, we have a statement from Wauwatosa Mayor Dennis McBride, which seems to confirm what happened. They showed up to this man's house. They tried to kill him. Last night, approximately 50 people assembled at the private residence of Wauwatosa police officer Joseph Mensah, engaged in a protest, and began to vandalize his home. Officer Mensah tried to engage in a dialogue with them, but was physically assaulted. As he retreated into his home, armed protesters approached the rear door, and one fired a shotgun round into his back door. The Wauwatosa Police Department received assistance in dispersing the crowd from numerous neighboring agencies. The WPD's investigation into the incident is ongoing. In recent weeks, various groups have protested in Wauwatosa demanding that Officer Mensah be fired. The city of Wauwatosa has always supported and protected the right of peaceful protest. Last night's event was not a peaceful protest. It was criminal behavior. If the perpetrators of this criminal behavior are identified, they will be prosecuted to the fullest extent allowed by law. Quote, tomorrow morning, I will be meeting with the police chief, the city administrator, the city attorney, and other city officials to determine which steps can be taken to ensure that Officer Mensah is fully protected and that criminal behavior of this kind will not happen again. On July 14th, the Common Council and I issued a statement asking the police chief and the city administrator to facilitate the transition of Officer Mensah from WPD employment. Nevertheless, every Common Council member and I support our police department. Every Common Council member and I support Officer Mensah's right to due process under the U.S. and Wisconsin constitutions, and as a police officer, to the additional due process protections found in the Wisconsin statutes. Under Wisconsin law, the decision as to whether he will be fired, as demanded in a citizen complaint, belongs solely to the Wauwatosa Police and Fire Commission, and that commission must be given a full opportunity to carry out its deliberations. During this difficult time, I ask all members of the community to reflect on their personal responsibility to engage in responsible and civil behavior. Now more than ever, it is essential that we all work together to heal a divided community. This will require patience and an understanding that though changes must occur, they can only occur through the functioning of democratic processes and not through violence. A good statement, but I find it to be, unfortunately, not so relevant. These far leftists, these anti-police individuals, they're just becoming angry mobs. Now, look, man, I understand. You got an officer-involved shooting. The problem I see is that there are many instances where cops need to be held accountable for wrongdoing. But not every instance is an officer engaging in wrongdoing, which is why we need to have investigations. The problem arises when people feel the investigations are not legitimate. And then it doesn't matter what's true or false or right or wrong. What matters is civil order breaks down. You got a large group of people that are showing up, and I'm reticent to actually call them protesters. They're protesting for sure, but they're not far left. This sounds like a bunch of, I guess technically leftist based on what they're protesting, but they're just angry people mad at the police. Now, the far left fuels this. They post messages. The media posts messages. It riles everybody up. It makes them believe that everything is worse than it's ever been. And these police are literally the worst people in our communities. But I wonder what really happened with this cop and the people that he ended up shooting. You live in the Chicagoland area. You live north of Chicago, Milwaukee. There are dangerous criminals, man. There's crime. It exists. Last night in Chicago, this morning in Chicago, mass rioting swept through the city. Cops were shot at. Cops fired back. There's apparently some kind of gang war going on. And people are on edge. You got to imagine now there's going to be cops going out enforcing the law under the assumption that they may be shot at any moment because of the animosity. The far left is making everything worse. They're escalating tensions. Now, they'll argue the police are doing it, and the police have been doing it. And there's a fair point, I would say, to an extent, that we got to make sure we held bad cops accountable. And even if the cop accidentally fires, we hold them accountable in an appropriate fashion, right? There's a story going around about a dude who was playing video games with his girlfriend. I'm not sure, maybe his wife. Somebody called in a domestic dispute. I believe the man's name was Ryan Whitaker. It sounds like, according to the 911 call, this person was actually just angry they were being noisy and playing video games late at night. So he calls in a domestic dispute and says they're slamming doors and they're screaming. And then they asked him if it was physical or something. And the guy says something like, if that'll get the cops here faster, I got work in the morning or something like that. Well, the cops show up and there's two cops and they're standing like this. One here in front of the door, one here to the side. This cop knocks. The dude opens the door and lunges out. Not like attacking, but like, jolts out, kind of like in a Kramer kind of move. And he's got a gun. The cops start yelling, whoa, 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 whoa. So he puts the gun back in his waistband and the cop behind, and they say, get on your knees, put your hands up. He does. Cop shoots him several times in the back, killing him. That cop needs to be held accountable. The guy had a gun, I know, but you came to his house. There are stories like this. People are mad about stories like this. The accountability for this officer is going to be like he loses his right to bear the weapon. He gets put on desk duty and he's taken off the job. or potentially manslaughter. Now, it is challenging because the dude was armed, but hey, man, you come to my house, you knock on my door, you got to expect that someone might be armed. It's a legal right in this country. I believe this happened in Arizona. So I bring the story up. I bring it up just because, listen, sometimes cops do wrong. And you don't just say, oh, well, someone's dead, keep the cop doing his thing. No. Look, if you got a trigger happy cop, if you got a scared cop, an anxious cop, and they don't know how to properly handle a weapon, then there needs to be some kind of accountability in that respect. It seems like based on this video, in that regard, put the cop on desk duty permanently. He should not be allowed to be going around with a weapon if he can't properly handle himself when, dealing with an unarmed local who's legally on his property and has done nothing wrong. That's why I think that's why I would say I understand a lot of what these protesters would complain about with police accountability. However, it's come to the point now where they're showing up to people's homes, and this goes beyond any protest. You know why? Maybe this cop, this guy in Wauwatosa, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Maybe he's a bad guy. Maybe he's a bad guy who just wants to go around and he hates people. I really don't think that's the case. I think that's rare, but possible. Okay, but maybe he's a bad guy and they can't get justice, so they're taking it into their own hands. Fine, whatever. I don't think that's the case, but the point is, we have escalated now. They have gone to people's homes in the Pacific Northwest. They have gone to residential areas in Chicago, where that video of the alderman complaining about it. And now they're going to the homes of officers and saying, we don't care about justice. This is, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. No, I'm not going to go there. But I'll just tell you this. We can't have vigilante mobs showing up and saying, we don't care about the review. We don't care about the law. That's why it's so important we have equality under the law and confidence in our legal system. And I think a lot of cops in the Chicagoland area especially, they get away with a lot. They really do. Now you're getting this. It's going to spread. These are not the same as the Antifa far leftists, but people are just going to say, you know what? Why bother with the courts? They'll just show up. Now, we had riots in Chicago. We had riots in Seattle. We had riots in Portland. We actually also had riots in Arizona, in downtown Phoenix. And they say 8 people were arrested after a protest. The event began as a peaceful march until protesters and law enforcement clashed at Phoenix Police Headquarters. Demonstrators organized the event to remember the 6-year anniversary of the death of Michael Brown, who was killed by police in Ferguson. During the protest, Phoenix Police Department played audio over the crowd saying it was unlawful. You know why I think this is really interesting? I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure that man who died was in Arizona, Ryan Whitaker, who was shot. But they're still rioting for Michael Brown. They are rioting or I should, is it really a riot? Maybe not. It's an unlawful assembly. But they're getting rowdy over something that happened 6 years ago, but it's still happening today. And that says to me, I know. I'm not saying they should go and riot for people. They should get justice. But it says that this isn't going to slow down anytime soon. It started under Obama, and it's only getting worse. The anger and sentiment that started under the Obama administration has transferred over now into, this election year for whatever reason, and it's going to result in real chaos. I mean, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with this White House siege. You've got far left people who are really, really angry. They've been protesting nonstop for nearly a decade. And now it's going to influence the election in some capacity. And, I think people will end up getting physically hurt. In Los Angeles, there was a Black Lives Matter rally for police reform, which was, my understanding, was peaceful as people sitting in a park. So I just wanted to highlight this to mention that we had a lot of action happening yesterday, the anniversary of Michael Brown and all that stuff. But I want to move you now to Bill Barr. Bill Barr directly addressed all of this, what's going on with the far left, what's happening across this country. In an interview on Fox News, AG Bill Barr says socialist Black Lives Matter protesters have created urban guerrilla warfare in cities across the country because of their desire for a left-wing utopia. Tensions between Republicans and Democrats ratcheted up significantly in recent months as the U.S. was hit with a swath of protests, riots, ahead of the November presidential election. Politicians on both sides of the aisle have hurled blame on each other for the civil unrest from dissatisfied Americans disillusioned by law enforcement and the federal government. But on Sunday, AG Barr leveled fresh attacks at Black Lives Matter protests and Democrats in an interview on Fox News. Barr, who has a history of denouncing Black Lives Matter protests, claimed the movement is comprised of Bolsheviks with a focus on some form of socialism and communism. He would be correct. They are a revolutionary group that is interested in some form of socialism, communism. They're essentially Bolsheviks. Their tactics are fascistic. He added that he believed the ongoing Black Lives Matter protests are a new form of urban guerrilla warfare. The way the guerrilla hides out among the people as a fish in the ocean. What they do is they are essentially shielding themselves or shrouding themselves in First Amendment activity. They go into the demonstrations, which are exercising First Amendment activity, and they insinuate themselves in there to shield themselves. That's where they swim. And what they do is they hijack these demonstrations and they provoke violence. Black Lives Matter and anti-police protests first sparked with George Floyd, we know. Since then, a number of police departments have seen their budgets defunded and the Minneapolis Police Department full out abolished. Barr told Fox News that the group's liberal leanings, they're not liberal, they're leftists, are parallel to the Democratic Party's supposed far left shift in recent years. The left has pulled away from the umbrella of classical liberal values that have undergirded the United States and made a secular religion out of seeking complete political victory. According to Barr, this alleged shift began after President Trump was elected into office. And from that point forward, there's been this resistance, said Barr, who added that power has become a secular religion of the left. They were trying to impeach him from day one. They have done everything they can. And I think it's because of the desire for power that the left wants. They want to run people's lives so they can design utopia for all of us. And it's the lust for power. And they weren't expecting Trump's victory, and it outrages them. Later in the interview, Barr lashed out at the media for projecting a narrative and allegedly lying to the American people about what's really happening. You don't see it on the networks. You don't see it on the other cable stations. And yet you hear about these peaceful demonstrations. So it's just a lie. It's a lie. The American people are being told a lie by the media. Bill Barr nails it. Seeing what Bill Barr is saying, I have to wonder if he actually watches my content. I mean that not literally. What I mean to say is he's right. I see the exact same thing. And I think right now, if you're paying attention to what's going on in this country, you also know what's happening. I saw a post from a friend. They called Donald Trump evil. And I thought about it. This person has no idea what's happening across the country with the riots, the looting, the people showing up to this cop's house, shooting at him. And I thought to myself, the only people who think Trump is evil are people who aren't paying attention to what's happening in this country. 'Cause I'll tell you what, I absolutely do not believe Donald Trump is evil. I have issues with his behavior. Sure, a lot of people do, but come on, he's not evil. I think, especially Bill Barr, they're trying to do the right thing and they're not perfect. That's about it. So why would someone assume they're evil? Joe Biden, this is the challenge. Because I would argue the Democrats are evil. The only difference between me and my friend when she's saying Trump is evil and I'm saying it's actually the Democrats is that I've been paying attention to the news and I've been debunking the lies and watching, real content. A lot of these leftist activists are getting their information from bunk sources who say peaceful protests, peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. You look at the Oregon Live in Portland, and they used 16 instances of the word protester. After the police had declared it a riot, people were trying to burn down a building with people inside. They said protesters, demonstrators. And that's the narrative you see. Peaceful protesters being viciously assaulted by Trump's Gestapo. But there is no Trump Gestapo. We know this because they rioted with impunity throughout Chicago all last night. Security guards in critical condition. We know this because they show up to a cop's house and they nearly kill the man. There's no Trump Gestapo. It's the far left that's going around causing all this damage and destruction. These are the lies. If you truly believe there was nothing but peaceful protests because of the fake news, if you truly believed Trump deployed federal forces nationwide to police riots because of fake news, well, then you were wrong. That isn't happening, but you're not paying attention. And so you think Trump is evil. Meanwhile, the Democrats have done everything in their power to support, bolster these riots, these protests ongoing. They've shut down the states. They've crippled the economy. They've tried to impeach the president. They have done everything in their power to stop Trump. And I wonder, I've had some conversations recently with some high profile individuals who are not public Trump supporters, who don't really talk politics. They're famous in other areas. And they're talking about how they're definitely voting for Trump. And it made me wonder, man, if these people who are mainstream, high profile, musicians and athletes and actors and stuff like this, you would assume they're on the left in these places in the Northwest, in New York and California. But they're secretly saying they're for Trump. I'll tell you what, man, you got to come out and just admit it and tell people what you think. Help them realize what's happening in this country. But if you just sit back and you don't say anything and you say to yourself, you're going to go and vote, well, I hope everyone else knows what's happening. Because if you sit back and you don't say it, you don't tell people to push back against this, you don't tell them what's really happening, they won't know. And a lot of people will just operate under the assumption that Trump is evil and they must support Biden. And I'm going to end with one final thought on this, because I see some conservatives talking about it. Trump says, if you vote for Biden, this is what you're going to get. This will be Biden's America. And they say, wait a minute, it's Trump's America right now. That's what the left is saying. But Trump, you're the president. This is happening under your watch. There's a couple important points. For one, the riots started under Obama. So yes, it is safe to assume if you appoint Biden, you'll get more of the same. However, you look at these jurisdictions and what do we see? We see Democratic politicians unable to enforce the law. Donald Trump had no problem sending the feds to the federal courthouse in Portland and dealing with Antifa. No problem at all. You get Joe Biden at the federal level, you will see more widespread riots against courthouses, against buildings, and it will be very crippling to the U.S. economy, to our government. Maybe that's what they want. That's the plan. But I'll tell you this, Trump is right. If Biden gets elected, he's not going to stand up to these people. He's going to back down and apologize like Wheeler did. And they're going to show up to your house like they do to this police officer, like to the people in Portland. You better stand up. Speak up. I don't know. I get it, man. People are scared to take the risk. What else can I say? I can't blame them. But I hope people find the courage. I got more segments coming up later today. The next will be at 4 p.m. over at timcast.net. Check out the channel, and I will see you all there.